He laughed as the shy waitress begged for mercy until the CCTV footage revealed who she really was. The rain hammered against the tall windows of the Azure Pearl, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, where a single reservation could cost more than most people earned in a week. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen, where the city's elite dined on dishes they couldn't pronounce and wines they'd never remember. But Emma Carter wasn't there to enjoy any of it. She was there to survive. At 26, Emma had perfected the art of invisibility. She moved between tables like a ghost, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her brown eyes always downcast, her voice barely above a whisper when she spoke. The uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron, hung loosely on her thin frame, as if even the clothes wanted to forget she was wearing them. To the customers, she was nothing. A hand that refilled water glasses, a shadow that cleared plates. Forgettable, replaceable, exactly what she needed to be. But Emma Carter hadn't always been invisible. 2 years ago, she'd been anything but. 2 years ago, her name had appeared in MIT's computer science journal alongside groundbreaking research on quantum encryption algorithms. 2 years ago, venture capitalists had fought for meetings with her. 2 years ago, she believed that brilliance and hard work were enough. 2 years ago, she'd been wrong. Now, as she carefully balanced a tray of champagne flutes, weaving through the crowded dining room, Emma's mind wandered to the equation she used to solve, the code she used to write, the future she used to have. But those thoughts were dangerous. They led to anger, and anger led to mistakes, and mistakes led to questions she couldn't afford to answer. So she pushed them down, deep down, and focused on the only thing that mattered, making it through another shift without being noticed. The front doors burst open with a force that made several diners turn their heads. A gust of wind and rain swept into the restaurant, followed by 6 men in dark suits, their eyes scanning the room with professional precision. Security. Then came the entourage. 3 more men in expensive tailored clothing, speaking rapidly in Arabic, their phones pressed to their ears. And finally he entered. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour moved through the world as if it had been created specifically for his pleasure. At 48, he carried himself with the absolute certainty of a man who had never been told no, never been denied, never been made to wait. His traditional white though was immaculate, the fabric so fine it seemed to glow in the restaurant's lighting. The black agall securing his white guttra was threaded with gold, and over his shoulders hung a bisht, a ceremonial cloak, in deep midnight blue with golden embroidery that caught the light with every movement. His face was striking. Sharp cheekbones, a perfectly trimmed beard streaked with gray, and dark eyes that assessed everything and everyone with the cold calculation of a man who measured the world in dollars and power. The restaurant manager, Mr. Peterson, practically sprinted across the floor, his face flushed with a mixture of excitement and terror. Sheikh Al-Mansour, what an honor. We weren't expecting you this evening. But of course, we have your usual table prepared. Right this way, please. Rashid didn't acknowledge him. He simply walked toward the private section at the back of the restaurant, his security detail fanning out around him, his business associates following like planets orbiting a sun. The other diners whispered excitedly. Everyone knew who he was. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour, CEO of Al-Mansour Energy Consortium, with oil fields across the Middle East and investments in technology companies worth billions. Forbes estimated his net worth at $15 billion, but rumors suggested it was much higher. He owned hotels, airlines, sports teams, and politicians. In rooms like this, he was royalty. Emma watched from the corner, her tray still balanced perfectly in her hands, as the Sheikh's party settled into the private dining area. She felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she got whenever extremely wealthy, extremely powerful men entered her space. They reminded her of Marcus, of betrayal, of everything she'd lost. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. It didn't matter. She would serve them, collect her tips, and forget they existed. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. Mr. Peterson rushed over to her, his voice urgent and low. Emma, I need you to take the Sheikh's table. Jennifer called in sick, and you're the only one available. I need perfection tonight. Do you understand? Absolute perfection. This man could buy this entire building with his pocket change. Do not mess this up. Emma's stomach dropped, but she nodded. Yes, sir. I understand. Good. Now go. They're waiting. She approached the private section with careful, measured steps, her face a mask of professional neutrality. The sheik sat ahead of the table, his associates on either side, all of them speaking in rapid Arabic. Emma understood every word. She'd learned the language during her graduate studies, along with Mandarin, French, and German, but she gave no indication of comprehension. That was another rule of invisibility. Never let them know you understand. Good evening, gentlemen, she said softly, her voice barely audible over the ambient music. My name is Emma, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. May I start you with something to drink? Rashid didn't look at her. He continued his conversation as if she didn't exist, gesturing emphatically while discussing what sounded like a merger negotiation. One of his associates, a younger man with slick back hair and an expensive watch, glanced at Emma with barely concealed disdain. Bring us your best champagne. The Cru Claus Diambane, if you have it, and make sure the glasses are properly chilled. Of course, sir. Right away. Emma turned to leave, but the young associate called after her, his tone sharp. And be quick about it. The sheik doesn't like to wait. She nodded without turning back, her jaw clenched so tightly it ached. In her previous life, she would have had a cutting response ready, something that would have put him in his place without crossing the line into rudeness. But that Emma was gone. This Emma just nodded and hurried away. The champagne they requested cost $3,000 a bottle. Emma retrieved it from the wine cellar with shaking hands, carefully checking the temperature, ensuring the glasses were perfect. When she returned to the table, the men were laughing about something, their voices loud and confident. She approached quietly, setting down the glasses with practiced precision. As she began to pour the first glass, the young associate suddenly stood up, reaching across the table for his phone. His elbow caught Emma's arm, hard. The bottle lurched in her hand, and several drops of golden champagne splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth, inches from the sheik's hand. The conversation stopped instantly. The silence was deafening. Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she quickly steadied the bottle, her mind racing. I'm so sorry, sir. You clumsy fool. The young associate's voice cut through the air like a whip. Do you have any idea how much this champagne costs? Do you have any idea who you just disrespected? I apologize, it was an accident. An accident? The sheik finally looked at her, and his gaze was like ice. Cold, assessing, dismissive. Is that what you call incompetence? An accident? Emma felt her face flush with humiliation. Around them, other diners had stopped eating, their attention drawn to the commotion. Sir, please, I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to? Rashid's voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. You didn't mean to ruin a $3,000 bottle of champagne? You didn't mean to disrespect me in front of my associates? Tell me, what exactly did you mean to do? Emma's voice caught in her throat. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. I apologize, Sheikh Al-Mansour. It won't happen again. You're right. It won't. Rashid turned to Mr. Peterson, who had materialized beside the table, his face pale with panic. I want her fired. Immediately. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. No, please. Sheikh Al-Mansour, I assure you, Mr. Peterson began, but Rashid raised a hand, silencing him. I don't want assurances. I want competence. This woman clearly doesn't belong in an establishment of this caliber. Remove her from my sight. Emma's hands trembled as she set down the champagne bottle. Please, sir, I need this job. I'll pay for the champagne. I'll work extra shifts. I'll do anything. Please don't. Rashid laughed. It was a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. You'll pay for it? With what? Your tips? He shook his head, his expression one of amused contempt. This is exactly the problem with people like you. No skills, no value, just excuses and begging. Pathetic. The word hung in the air like poison. Emma felt something inside her crack, a fissure in the carefully constructed wall. she'd built around her emotions. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him exactly who she was, what she'd accomplished, what she'd lost. She wanted to explain that she had more intelligence in her little finger than he had in his entire arrogant, privileged body. But she couldn't, because Emma Carter, MIT graduate and cybersecurity genius, didn't exist anymore. Only this broken, desperate version remained. "Please," she whispered one more time, hating herself for the weakness in her voice. Rashid had already turned back to his associates, dismissing her entirely. "Peterson, handle this, and bring us someone competent." Mr. Peterson grabbed Emma's arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "My office. Now." Emma walked to the restaurant in a daze, aware of every eye on her, every whispered comment, every pitying look. In Mr. Peterson's office, the conversation was brief and brutal. She was fired, effective immediately. She could collect her final paycheck at the end of the week. He was sorry, but he couldn't afford to lose a client like Sheikh Al-Mansour. She understood, didn't she? Emma didn't respond. She simply removed her apron, folded it neatly on his desk, and walked out. The rain had intensified by the time she stepped onto the street, soaking through her thin jacket within seconds. She didn't care. She walked for blocks, her mind numb, her body moving on autopilot. By the time she reached her tiny studio apartment in a rundown building in Queens, she was shivering uncontrollably, her teeth chattering, her hair plastered to her face. Inside, she peeled off her wet clothes and stood in the shower until the hot water ran out, trying to wash away the humiliation, the anger, the crushing sense of helplessness. But it wouldn't wash away. It never did. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a threadbare towel, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, a stranger wearing her face. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. This wasn't the life she was supposed to have. And suddenly, standing there in her miserable apartment, something shifted inside her. The numbness began to crack, and underneath it, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 2 years: rage. Emma walked to her closet and pulled out a locked metal box from the back corner, hidden under old clothes. Inside was her laptop, not the cheap one she used for job applications, but her real laptop, the custom-built machine with military-grade encryption and processing power that would make most tech companies jealous. She hadn't opened it in months, afraid of what it represented, afraid of being pulled back into the world she fled. But tonight, she didn't care about fear. She powered on, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a speed and precision that would have shocked anyone who'd seen her fumbling with champagne bottles hours earlier. Within minutes, she bypassed the Azure Pearl's firewall, laughably simple, really, and accessed their security system. The restaurant had 16 CCTV cameras covering every angle of the dining room, the kitchen, the entrances, and the private sections. All of them recorded continuously, with footage stored on a local server for 30 days before being automatically deleted. Emma pulled up the footage from tonight, her heart pounding as she watched herself approach the Sheik's table. She watched the young associate stand up, watch his elbow deliberately swing out. Not an accident. She realized a growing fury, but a calculated movement, and strike her arm. She watched the champagne spill. She watched herself beg. She watched Rashid laugh. But that wasn't all the cameras had captured. Emma's eyes narrowed as she noticed something else. The young associate glancing at one of the security guards before standing up, a barely perceptible nod passing between them. She rewound the footage, enhanced the image, and there it was, clear as day. The whole thing had been staged. But why? Emma dug deeper, pulling up footage from earlier in the evening, before the Sheik's arrival. She watched the security team enter first, watched them speak briefly with Mr. Peterson, watched one of them slip him what looked like a thick envelope. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing the restaurant financial records. Another simple hack. And there it was, a $50,000 consulting fee paid to Peterson 3 days ago by a shell company. A shell company that, after 15 minutes of digging, Emma traced back to Al-Mansour Energy Consortium. They'd paid Peterson to set her up, but again, why? She was nobody, just a waitress. Unless Emma's blood ran cold as a possibility occurred to her. She pulled up the employee records and cross-referenced them with the dates of the Sheikh's previous visits. Every time Rashid Al-Mansour dined at the Azure Pearl, someone got fired. Always someone young, always someone vulnerable, always someone who couldn't fight back. It was a pattern, a game. He paid the restaurant to stage incidents so he could exercise his power, so he could humiliate people for his own amusement. The rage that had been simmering inside Emma exploded into white-hot fury. Her hands shook as she created a new folder and began compiling evidence. But as she worked, she noticed something else in the footage, something that made her pause. After she left the table, the Sheikh and his associates had continued their conversation, and the camera had captured audio. Emma plugged in her headphones and listened, her Arabic comprehension allowing her to understand every word. They weren't discussing business. They were discussing something else entirely. Data, stolen corporate data, encryption keys, backdoor access to financial systems, and the technical terms they used: quantum encryption, blockchain verification, algorithmic penetration. These weren't terms that oil executives typically threw around. These were terms from her world, from cybersecurity. Emma's mind raced. She recorded the audio, ran it through translation and transcription software, and began analyzing the conversation. Within an hour, she'd pieced together enough to understand what was happening. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour was involved in corporate espionage on a massive scale, using stolen data to manipulate markets and destroy competitors. And the technology he was using, the encryption methods he was discussing, sounded eerily familiar. She pulled up her old research files, the ones she'd saved from her MIT days, and compared the technical specifications. Her heart nearly stopped. The encryption algorithm they were discussing was hers, the one Marcus had stolen, the one that had destroyed her life. Somehow, it had ended up in the hands of one of the world's most powerful and ruthless men. Emma sat back, her mind spinning with possibilities. She had evidence of Rashid's crimes. She had proof that she'd been set up. She had the technical knowledge to understand exactly what he was doing and how to stop it. But using any of it would mean revealing herself, revealing her skills, revealing that she was more than just a broken waitress hiding from her past. It would mean stepping back into the light, back into the world that had chewed her up and spit her out. For a long moment, Emma stared at her laptop screen, at the evidence she compiled, at the choice before her. She could delete everything, pretend tonight had never happened, find another minimum wage job, and continue surviving in the shadows. Or she could fight back. She could remind the world and herself who Emma Carter really was. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, with a deep breath and a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in 2 years, she began to type. She created an anonymous email account, attached a carefully edited video clip showing only the moment when the associate deliberately struck her arm, and composed a brief message. Your employee staged an incident to humiliate an innocent worker. I thought you should know the truth. More to come if interested. She addressed it to the email listed on Al-Mansour Energy Consortium's website as belonging to Rashid's personal legal counsel, took one more deep breath, and hit send. The message disappeared into the digital void, and Emma closed her laptop, her heart pounding. She had no idea what would happen next, but for the first time in 2 years, she felt something other than despair. She felt alive. Across the city, in a penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental, Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. He held a glass of whiskey, Macallan 1926, worth more than most people's cars, and reflected on the evening with satisfaction. The look on that waitress's face when he'd fired her had been delicious. The fear, the desperation, the complete powerlessness. It reminded him why he'd clawed his way to the top of the world. Because up here, he was untouchable. Up here, he was God. His phone buzzed. A message from his legal counsel, marked urgent. Rashid frowned and opened it, expecting some tedious contract issue. Instead, he found himself watching a video clip. It took him a moment to recognize the scene. The Azure Pearl, his table, the waitress. But the angle was different, clearer, and what he saw made his blood run cold. His associate, Khalid, deliberately striking the woman's arm. The setup, the staged incident. all captured in perfect high-definition clarity. Below the video, a message. Your employee staged an incident to humiliate an innocent worker. I thought you should know the truth. More to come if interested. Rashid watched the video 3 more times, his mind racing. Someone had hacked the restaurant security system. Someone had isolated the specific footage. Someone knew what had happened and had the technical skills to prove it. But who? And more importantly, what else did they know? What else had the cameras captured? What else had been said at that table? For the first time in years, Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. And beneath that, just the faintest whisper of fear. Someone out there was watching him. Someone out there knew his secrets. And whoever they were just getting started. The game had changed. And Rashid had no idea that the shy, broken waitress he'd humiliated and destroyed just hours earlier was the one holding all the cards. The morning after Emma sent the video, she woke to the harsh reality of unemployment. Her savings account held exactly $247. Rent was due in 12 days. She had no job, no prospects, and no safety net. The brief surge of empowerment she'd felt the night before had faded, replaced by the cold practicality of survival. Revenge was a luxury she couldn't afford. She spent the day sending out job applications. More restaurants, more retail positions, anything that would hire someone with no references and a suspicious gap in their employment history. By evening, she'd heard nothing back. Desperation began to creep in, that familiar suffocating feeling that had become her constant companion over the past 2 years. Emma was heating up a cup of instant ramen, her dinner for the 3rd night in a row, when her laptop chimed with a new email notification. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another automated rejection. But something made her check. The sender's address made her freeze. Email protected. Her hands trembled as she opened the message. It was brief, written in formal English. Your information has been received and verified. The individual responsible for the incident has been disciplined. However, I have questions about how you obtained this footage and what your intentions are. We should speak. Name your location and time. You will be compensated for your trouble. Faisal Al-Rashid Legal Counsel, Al-Mansour Energy Consortium. Emma read the message 5 times, her mind analyzing every word, every implication. They wanted to meet. They were offering money. But more than that, they were worried. The phrase, what your intentions are, betrayed their concern. They didn't know who she was or what else she might have. Good. That gave her leverage. But meeting them was dangerous. These were powerful people with unlimited resources. If they perceived her as a threat, she could disappear and no one would ever know. She needed to be smart about this, needed to maintain her advantage while protecting herself. After an hour of deliberation, she composed a response. I'm not interested in money. I'm interested in justice. The waitress you humiliated deserves an apology and her job back. If Sheikh Al-Mansour agrees to meet her personally and make this right, I'll consider this matter closed. If not, the full footage, including audio, goes public. You have 48 hours. I'll be in touch with location details. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then immediately began preparing for every possible outcome. She created multiple backup copies of all the footage and evidence, storing them in encrypted cloud servers with dead man switches. If she didn't log in every 24 hours, the files would automatically be sent to major news outlets. It was a precaution she'd learned from her previous life, when corporate espionage and data theft were daily concerns. The response came within 30 minutes. Agreed. Sheikh Al-Mansour will meet with the waitress personally. Provide location and time. Emma's heart raced. She hadn't actually expected them to agree. The Sheikh himself was willing to meet with her. Either he was genuinely concerned about the footage going public, or this was a trap. Probably both. She needed a public location, somewhere with witnesses, somewhere she could control. After careful consideration, she chose Bryant Park, right in the heart of Manhattan. Open, crowded, with multiple exit routes. She sent the details. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. by the fountain. That night, Emma barely slept. She kept running through scenarios, preparing for every possibility. What would she say to him? How would she act? She couldn't reveal her technical knowledge, couldn't let him know she was anything more than a lucky waitress who'd stumbled onto the footage. But she also needed to be strong enough to demand respect, to make him understand that she wasn't someone who could be dismissed or destroyed on a whim. The next day, Emma arrived at Bryant Park an hour early. She wore jeans and a simple jacket, her hair down for once, trying to look like any other New Yorker enjoying a spring afternoon. She positioned herself near the fountain with a clear view of all approaches, her phone in her pocket with 911 pre-dialed, ready to call with one touch. At exactly 2 p.m., she saw them arrive. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour looked different in daylight, somehow more human and yet more intimidating. He wore Western clothes today, an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire year rent, a crisp white shirt, and a burgundy tie. His security detail fanned out around the area, trying to be discreet but failing miserably. He walked toward the fountain with the same confident stride she remembered from the restaurant, but there was something else in his expression now, curiosity, and perhaps the slightest hint of uncertainty. He stopped a few feet away from her, his dark eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. But she didn't. She held his gaze, channeling every ounce of strength she had left. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rashid's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. You're the waitress. My name is Emma Carter. Her voice was steady, stronger than she'd expected. And yes, I'm the woman you humiliated and fired 3 nights ago. Rashid's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and something that might have been respect. You sent the video. You hacked the restaurant security system. I obtained evidence of what really happened. How I obtained it is irrelevant. It's extremely relevant. Rashid took a step closer, and immediately 2 of his security guards moved forward. Emma tensed, but Rashid waved them back. A waitress who can bypass commercial security systems and extract specific footage isn't just a waitress. Who are you really, Emma Carter? I'm someone who was treated unjustly. That's all you need to know. No. Rashid's voice was firm. That's not all I need to know. Because if you have the skills to do what you did, then you also have the skills to access much more than just security footage. You could have heard conversations. You could have recorded audio. You could have... He stopped abruptly, and Emma saw the moment he realized exactly how much danger he might be in. She decided to push her advantage. I could have done a lot of things, but I didn't, because unlike some people, I'm not interested in destroying lives for entertainment. I just want what's fair. And what's fair in your estimation? An apology, a public acknowledgement that I did nothing wrong, and compensation for the wages I've lost. Rashid studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to Emma's complete shock, he said, "You're right. What happened to you is unjust. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I was cruel, unnecessarily so, and I apologize. Emma hadn't expected that. She'd expected denial, threats, maybe an attempt to buy her silence, but not an actual apology. Why? She asked. Why did you do it? Why pay the restaurant to set me up? Rashid's jaw tightened. I didn't. That was Khalid's initiative. He thought he was impressing me by demonstrating power, by putting someone in their place. He was wrong, and he's been removed from my employment. But you went along with it. You laughed at me. You called me pathetic. Yes, I did. Rashid's voice was quiet now, almost reflective. I've spent my entire life in a world where power is everything, where showing weakness is death, where people are either useful or disposable. I've become accustomed to treating others as if they exist only to serve my needs. It's inexcusable, but it's the truth. Emma wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to her righteous fury, but something in his tone gave her pause. He sounded almost tired. Human. That's not an excuse, she said. No, it's not. It's an explanation, and a poor one at that. Rashid reached into his jacket pocket, and Emma tensed, but he only pulled out a business card. I want to make this right, not just with an apology, but with action. I'll have my legal team draft a public statement clearing your name. I'll personally ensure you're compensated for lost wages and emotional distress. And if you want your job back at the Azure Pearl, I'll make it happen. Emma took the card, studying it. It was simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number embossed in gold. I don't want my job back. I don't want to work in a place where I can be humiliated and discarded on a whim. Then what do you want? It was a good question. What did she want? A week ago, she would have said she just wanted to survive, to stay invisible, to avoid pain. But standing here, facing down one of the most powerful men in the world and holding her own, Emma realized she wanted more than that. She wanted her life back. She wanted to stop hiding. She wanted to be Emma Carter again, not the broken shadow she'd become. But she couldn't say any of that. Not yet. Not to him. I want to be left alone, she said finally. I want to move on with my life without looking over my shoulder, wondering if you're going to retaliate. You have my word. No retaliation. In fact, Rashid hesitated, then continued, I'd like to help you. Whatever you need, a reference, connections, financial assistance. Consider it done. It's the least I can do. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's restitution. Rashid's eyes locked onto hers. And perhaps it's curiosity. You're not what you appear to be, Emma Carter. A waitress who can hack security systems, who can negotiate with billionaires without flinching, who can turn the tables on someone like me. That's not ordinary. That's exceptional. And I find myself wondering what your story is. What brought you to that restaurant? What you're hiding? Emma's heart hammered in her chest. He was too perceptive, too intelligent. She needed to end this conversation before he dug any deeper. My story is my own, and I'd like to keep it that way. Fair enough. Rashid extended his hand. Then let me simply say this. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Truly. And if you ever change your mind about accepting help, or if you ever need anything, call that number. Day or night. I owe you a debt, Emma Carter, and I always pay my debts. Emma looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment before shaking it. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. Goodbye, Sheikh Al-Mansour. Rashid, please. I think we're past formalities. Emma nodded and turned to walk away, but Rashid's voice stopped her. Emma, one more thing. The audio from that night, the conversation at my table. Did you listen to it? She turned back slowly, her expression carefully neutral. Should I have? Rashid studied her face, searching for any hint of deception. If you did, you'd know that some conversations are more dangerous than others. Some secrets are worth killing for. I need to know if you heard anything that might put you at risk. Emma's mind raced. He was warning her, or threatening her, or both. I heard you humiliate me. That's all I needed to hear. Good. Keep it that way. Rashid's expression was serious now, almost concerned. Stay safe, Emma Carter, and be careful who you trust. With that cryptic warning, he turned and walked away, his security detail closing around him like a protective cocoon. Emma stood by the fountain, watching him disappear into crowd, her mind spinning. What had just happened? Had she won? Had she made things better or worse? And why did she get the distinct impression that this wasn't over, that it was only beginning? She looked down at the business card in her hand, at the embossed gold lettering, at the phone number that represented a direct line to one of the world's most powerful men. She should throw it away. She should delete all the footage, forget this ever happened, and go back to her invisible life. That would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But Emma Carter had never been very good at playing it safe. And as she walked out of Bryant Park, slipping the card into her pocket, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet understand. The question was whether it had changed for better or worse. Only time would tell. 3 days after their meeting in Bryant Park, Emma's life had taken on a surreal quality. True to his word, Rashid had his legal team issue a public statement, posted on Al-Mansour Energy Consortium's official website, and sent to major news outlets, acknowledging that an employee had staged an incident at the Azure Pearl resulting in the unjust termination of a staff member, and that the company took full responsibility for the harm caused. Emma's name wasn't mentioned, But a check for $50,000 arrived at her apartment via courier, along with a formal letter of apology signed by Rashid himself. $50,000. More money than Emma had seen in 2 years. Enough to pay rent for months, to buy groceries without counting every penny, to breathe without the constant weight of financial panic crushing her chest. She should have been relieved, grateful, but instead she felt unsettled, because the letter had included one additional line, handwritten at the bottom. "If you're ever ready to tell me your real story, I'm ready to listen." Emma tried to ignore it. She paid her rent, stocked her refrigerator, and continued sending out job applications. But her mind kept drifting back to that conversation in Bryant Park, to the way Rashid had looked at her with genuine curiosity and something that might have been respect. And despite herself, despite every logical reason to stay away from him, she found herself wondering about him too. Who was Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour beneath the wealth and power? What had shaped him into someone who could be both cruel and apologetic, arrogant and perceptive? She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself to focus on rebuilding her life, on finding a new job, on moving forward. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she found herself pulling up information about him on her laptop. Not hacking, just public information. News articles, interviews, business profiles. And the more she read, the more complex the picture became. Rashid had inherited his father's oil company at 25 after a helicopter crash killed both his parents. He'd transformed it from a regional player into a global powerhouse through aggressive expansion and strategic investments. He was known for being ruthless in business, but surprisingly generous in philanthropy, having donated hundreds of millions to education and healthcare initiatives across the Middle East. He'd been married once, briefly in his 30s, but his wife had died in childbirth along with their son. He hadn't remarried. He had no children, no family except distant cousins. He was, despite all his wealth and power, fundamentally alone. Emma closed her laptop, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy. She understood loneliness. She understood loss. She understood building walls to protect yourself from further pain. Maybe that's why he'd become so callous, so dismissive of others. Maybe cruelty was easier than vulnerability. Maybe power was a substitute for connection. She knew all about substitutes. On the 5th day after their meeting, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello, Emma Carter?" The voice was male professional with a slight British accent. "My name is Faisal Al-Rashid. I'm Sheikh Al-Mansour's legal counsel. We corresponded via email. I remember. What can I do for you, Mr. Al-Rashid? Actually, I'm calling on behalf of the Sheikh. He'd like to extend an invitation to dinner this evening. Nothing formal, just a conversation. He has a proposition he'd like to discuss with you." Emma's guard went up immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to say. The Sheikh prefers to discuss it personally, but I can assure you it's legitimate and potentially very beneficial to you. Will you accept?" Every instinct told Emma to refuse. Getting more involved with Rashid was dangerous. He was too perceptive, too curious, and she had too many secrets. But another part of her, the part that had been dormant for 2 years, the part that used to thrive on challenges and intellectual stimulation, was intrigued. What could he possibly want from her? "Where and when?" she heard herself say. "The Sheikh's residence. I'll send a car for you at 7 p.m. The driver will have identification. And Emma, the Sheikh asked me to assure you that you'll be perfectly safe. This is simply a conversation between two people who got off on the wrong foot and would like to start over." After hanging up, Emma spent the next several hours in a state of anxious anticipation. She changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a simple but elegant navy blouse, nice enough to be respectful but not so formal as to suggest she was trying to impress him. At exactly 7 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. The driver, a professional-looking man in his 50s, showed her his credentials and opened the door with a polite smile. The drive took them to the Upper East Side, to a building Emma recognized as one of the most exclusive residential towers in Manhattan. The penthouse, naturally. They rode the elevator in silence, and when the doors opened, Emma stepped into a space that redefined her understanding of luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park and the city beyond. The decor was a stunning blend of modern minimalism and Middle Eastern elegance. Sleek furniture in rich fabrics, intricate geometric patterns in gold and deep blue, artwork that probably cost more than most houses. Rashid stood by the windows, his back to her, wearing casual clothes for the first time since she'd met him, dark slacks and a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He turned as she entered, and Emma was struck by how different he looked in his own space. Less intimidating, more human. Emma, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, she admitted. Your lawyer said you have a proposition? I do. But first, would you like something to drink? Wine? Coffee? I promise nothing will be spilled this time. There was a hint of self-deprecating humor in his voice that surprised her. Water is fine. Rashid poured 2 glasses from a crystal pitcher, handed her one, and gestured to the seating area. They sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Rashid said, I've been thinking about you constantly since our meeting, about who you are, what you're capable of, and I've come to a conclusion, which is that you're wasting your potential. Whatever brought you to that restaurant, whatever circumstances reduce you to serving champagne to people who don't appreciate you, it's beneath you. You have skills that are rare and valuable. You should be using them. Emma's heart rate quickened. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Rashid leaned forward, his gaze intense. I had my people look into you. Not invasively, just public records. Emma Carter, graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a degree in computer science. Published 3 papers on quantum encryption algorithms before the age of 25. Worked for Nexus Security Solutions for 18 months before disappearing completely 2 years ago. No social media, no digital footprint, no trace. Someone with your background doesn't end up serving tables unless something catastrophic happened. So I'll ask you directly, what happened, Emma? Emma felt the walls closing in. He knew. Not everything, but enough. She could lie, but he'd see through it. She could leave, but that would only make him more curious. Or she could take a risk. She could trust him with a piece of the truth and see what he did with it. I was betrayed, she said finally, her voice quiet but steady, by someone I loved, someone I trusted. He stole my work, destroyed my reputation, and made sure I could never work in my field again. So I disappeared. I became invisible, and I've been surviving ever since. Rashid's expression softened. I'm sorry. That's unconscionable. It's the past. I've moved on. Have you? Rashid challenged gently. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been hiding, running, letting whoever hurt you win. Emma felt a flash of anger. You don't know anything about it. You don't know what it's like to have everything you work for stolen, to be called a liar and a fraud, to watch someone else take credit for your brilliance while you're left with nothing. You're right. I don't know what that's like. Rashid's voice was calm, measured. But I do know what it's like to let fear control you, to build walls so high that nothing can hurt you. But nothing can reach you either. I've been doing it for years. And I can tell you from experience, it's not living. It's just existing. Emma looked away, blinking back unexpected tears. Why do you care? Why does any of this matter to you? Because I see something in you that I recognize. Potential, brilliance, and waste. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met, Emma, and I've met a lot of smart people. You shouldn't be hiding in the shadows. You should be changing the world. He paused and continued. And selfishly, I need someone like you. For what? I'm being targeted. Corporate espionage, data theft, attempts to infiltrate my company's systems. I have a security team, but they're not equipped to handle sophisticated cyber attacks. I need someone who understands encryption, who can think like a hacker, who can protect my assets and identify threats before they become catastrophic. I need you. Emma stared at him. You want to hire me? As what? Your personal cybersecurity consultant. More than that, I want you to build and lead my entire digital security division. Full autonomy, unlimited budget, a team of your choosing, and a salary that reflects your actual worth, not what some restaurant thinks you're worth. It was everything Emma had dreamed of 2 years ago. The chance to work at the highest level, to use her skills to prove herself. But it was also terrifying. I can't. If I resurface, if I start working publicly again, he'll find out. He'll come after me. He'll destroy me all over again. Who is he? Rashid's voice was hard now, protective. Give me a name. Emma hesitated, then said, Dr. Marcus Hale. He's a computer scientist, well-connected, respected, and he's very good at making people believe his lies. Rashid pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. After a moment, his expression darkened. Marcus Hale, currently presenting at the International Technology Summit here in New York, discussing advances in quantum encryption algorithms. Your algorithms. Emma's blood ran cold. He's here? In New York. At the Javits Center. The summit runs for 3 more days. Rashid looked up at her, his eyes blazing with something fierce. Emma, listen to me. You can keep hiding, keep running. Keep letting this man profit from your work while you struggle to pay rent. Or you can fight back. And I can help you. I have resources, lawyers, investigators. We can expose him. We can get you justice. It's not that simple. He has proof that the work is his. He has documentation, patents, everything. I was naive. I trusted him. I didn't protect myself. Then we'll find other proof. We'll dig into his background, his other work, his patterns. Men like that don't steal once. They make it a habit, and habits leave trails. Rashid stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. I know what it's like to feel powerless, Emma. After my wife and son died, I felt like the universe had taken everything that mattered. I could have given up. Instead, I built an empire. Not because I needed more money or power, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could still create something, still matter, still make a mark on the world. You have that same choice now. Give up or fight back. Emma joined him at the window, looking out at the glittering lights of Manhattan. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably at some expensive restaurant, celebrating his success, never giving a thought to the woman whose life he'd destroyed. The injustice of it burned in her chest. If I do this, if I work for you and we go after Marcus, it could get ugly. He won't go down without a fight. Good. I prefer worthy opponents. Rashid turned to face her, and for the first time, Emma saw him smile. A real smile, not the cold, arrogant expression from the restaurant. What do you say, Emma Carter? Ready to stop hiding and start fighting? Emma thought about the past 2 years. The fear, the shame, the endless cycle of survival. She thought about who she used to be. Confident, brilliant, fearless. She thought about who she'd become. Broken, invisible, defeated. And she realized that Rashid was right. This wasn't living. This was just existing. And she was tired of merely existing. Yes, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. I'm ready. Rashid extended his hand. And this time when Emma shook it, it felt like more than an agreement. It felt like a partnership, like the beginning of something that could change everything. Then, let's get to work. We have a thief to catch and a reputation to restore. And Emma, I promise you this. By the time we're done, Marcus Hale will regret the day he ever crossed you. For the first time in 2 years, Emma Carter smiled. A real smile. Because she finally had something she'd lost. Hope. And with hope came possibility. And with possibility came power. The game was on. And this time, she wasn't going to lose. Over the next 3 days, Emma's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Rashid moved her into a secure apartment in his building. For safety, he insisted, though Emma suspected it was also to keep her close. He introduced her to his legal team, his security specialists, and his technology advisors, making it clear that she was to be given complete access and authority. The message was unmistakable. Emma Carter was under his protection, and anyone who crossed her would answer to him. But more than the resources, more than the money or the security, what surprised Emma was Rashid himself. Away from the public eye, away from the performance of power, he was different. Still intense, still commanding, but also thoughtful, curious, and surprisingly funny. They spent hours talking about technology, about business, about life. He told her about growing up in Dubai, about the pressure of inheriting his father's empire, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted something from you. She told him about MIT, about the thrill of solving impossible problems, about the betrayal that had shattered her world. They didn't talk about the obvious attraction building between them. That would have been too complicated, too dangerous. But was there, humming beneath every conversation, every accidental touch, every moment their eyes met and held just a fraction too long. Emma told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural result of someone showing her kindness after years of cruelty. But late at night, alone in her new apartment, she couldn't deny the truth. She was falling for him. And that terrified her more than anything Marcus had ever done. On the third day, Emma's research team, 3 brilliant hackers Rashid had recruited within 24 hours, made a breakthrough. They'd been digging into Marcus's background, following Rashid's theory that theft was a pattern, not an isolated incident. And they'd found something. 5 years ago, before Marcus met Emma, he'd worked with another researcher, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chun. She'd published groundbreaking work on machine learning algorithms, with Marcus listed as a co-author. But according to university records they'd obtained, Sarah had filed a complaint claiming Marcus had stolen her work. The complaint had been dismissed due to lack of evidence, and Sarah had left academia entirely. She now worked as a high school teacher in Seattle. Emma stared at the information on her screen, her heart pounding. We need to talk to her. If she'll testify, if she'll share her experience, it establishes a pattern. It proves Marcus is a serial thief. Rashid, who'd been reading over her shoulder, nodded. I'll have my plane ready in an hour. We'll go to Seattle tonight. We. Emma turned to look at him. You don't have to come. I can handle this. I know you can, but I want to come. Besides, you might need backup if she's reluctant to talk. People tend to be more cooperative when they realize they have powerful allies. 6 hours later, Emma and Rashid stood on the doorstep of a modest house in a quiet Seattle suburb. When Sarachan opened the door, Emma saw her own past reflected in the woman's eyes. The wariness, the defeat, the resignation of someone who'd been broken by injustice. Dr. Chen, my name is Emma Carter. I worked with Marcus Hale, and I think he did to me what he did to you. Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something like relief. Come in, please. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to believe me. Over coffee in Sarah's small kitchen, the story poured out. Marcus had been her graduate advisor. She developed the machine learning algorithms as part of her dissertation. Marcus had encouraged her, supported her, even helped her refine the work. But when it came time to publish, he'd insisted on being listed as co-author. Standard practice for advisors, he'd said. Sarah had agreed, trusting him. Then, at the last minute, he'd submitted the paper with only his name on it. When Sarah confronted him, he claimed she'd made an error, that he'd always been the primary researcher. He had documentation, emails, everything needed to prove his version. Sarah's version had no proof, just her word against his. The university had sided with Marcus. Sarah's reputation was destroyed. She left academia and never looked back. I'm so sorry, Emma said quietly. I know exactly how you feel. He did the same thing to me. Quantum encryption algorithms. He stole everything and left me with nothing. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was crazy. That maybe I had misremembered. That maybe he was right and I was wrong. But I knew it was my work. Rashid, who'd been silent until now, leaned forward. Dr. Chun, would you be willing to testify to this? To go on record with your experience? We're building a case against Marcus, and your testimony could be crucial. Sarah looked frightened. He'll destroy me. Again, he has connections, money, lawyers. So do I, Rashid said firmly. And I promise you he won't touch you. You have my word and my resources. It's time Marcus Hale faced consequences for what he's done. Sarah looked between them, hope and fear warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. Okay, yes, I'll testify. Someone needs to stop him. They spent the next 2 hours documenting Sarah's story, collecting every piece of evidence she'd saved, emails, drafts, notes. By the time they left, Emma felt like she'd found not just a witness, but an ally, someone who understood, someone who'd survived the same nightmare. On the flight back to New York, Emma sat by the window, watching the lights of cities pass below. Rashid sat beside her, working on his laptop, but after a while he closed it and turned to her. "You did well today. Sarah trusts you. That's not easy to earn from someone who's been betrayed. She trusts me because she knows I understand. We're part of the same terrible club. Not for much longer. By the time we're done, you'll both have justice. And Marcus will have nothing." Emma turned to look at him. "Why are you doing this? Really? It's not just about hiring me for security. You could have found someone else, someone without all this baggage. Why invest so much time and resources in my vendetta?" Rashid was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because when I met you in that restaurant, when I humiliated you and laughed at your pain, I saw something in your eyes. Not just hurt, but strength. You were broken, but not destroyed. And I realized that I'd become the kind of man who breaks people for entertainment. The kind of man I swore I'd never be." He paused, his voice dropping. "My father was cruel. He ruled through fear and intimidation. I watched him destroy people who crossed him, people who disappointed him, people who were simply in his way. I hated him for it. And then I became him. When I saw that video, when I saw what I'd done to you, I saw my father. And I hated myself." Emma felt her throat tighten. "Rashid, helping you isn't charity, Emma. It's redemption. For both of us. You get your life back, and I get to prove that I'm not the monster I become. That I can still be the man I wanted to be before power corrupted me." Without thinking, Emma reached out and took his hand. "You're not a monster. You made a mistake, but you're trying to fix it. That's more than most people would do." Rashid looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Vulnerability, longing, connection. "Emma, I need to tell you something. And I need you to know that it doesn't change our professional arrangement, that you're under no obligation to reciprocate that." "Just say it," Emma whispered. "I'm falling for you. I know it's inappropriate. I know the timing is terrible. I know I have no right after what I did. But I can't stop thinking about you. Your brilliance, your strength, your resilience. You're extraordinary, Emma Carter. And I want—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I'm sorry. Forget I said anything." Emma's heart was racing so fast, she thought it might burst. She should pull away. She should maintain professional boundaries. She should protect herself from another potential heartbreak. But looking at Rashid, seeing the genuine emotion in his eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, she realized something. She was falling for him, too. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was exactly what they both needed. "I'm falling for you, too," she said softly. "And it terrifies me. Because the last time I trusted someone, the last time I let someone in, he destroyed me. I don't know if I can survive that again." "Then don't trust me yet. Let me earn it. Let me prove that I'm different, that I'll protect you, that I'll never hurt you the way he did." Rashid lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I'm not asking for forever, Emma. I'm just asking for a chance." Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but for once they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of hope, of possibility, of something that felt dangerously like happiness. "Okay," she whispered. "A chance." They sat in silence for the rest of the flight, hands intertwined, both of them knowing that everything had changed. The mission to take down Marcus was no longer just about justice. It was about building a future, together, and neither of them was going to let anything or anyone stand in their way. The International Technology Summit was in its final day when Emma and Rashid arrived at the Javits Center. Emma wore a professional Navy suit that Rashid had insisted on buying her. "You need to look like the expert you are," he'd said, and her hair was styled in a sleek bun. She looked every inch the successful tech executive she used to be. But inside, her stomach churned with anxiety. She was about to face Marcus for the first time in 2 years. The man who'd stolen her work. destroyed her reputation, and forced her into hiding. And she had no idea how she'd react when she saw him. Rashid must have sensed her nervousness because he placed a reassuring hand on the small of her back as they entered the convention center. "Remember, you're not alone. I'm right here, and we have everything we need to expose him. You're in control now, not him." They made their way to conference room 3B, where Marcus was scheduled to give his presentation on revolutionary advances in quantum encryption. The irony wasn't lost on Emma. Her revolutionary advances, her quantum encryption, her life's work, being presented by the man who'd stolen it. The room was packed with tech executives, investors, and journalists. Emma and Rashid slipped into seats near the back, and Emma pulled out her phone, opening the recording app. Everything Marcus said would be documented. Then he walked onto the stage, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. Dr. Marcus Hale looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, handsome in a polished way, with sandy hair and blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He wore an expensive suit and exuded confidence as he greeted the audience. To everyone in this room, he was a brilliant innovator, a leader in his field. Only Emma knew the truth. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm thrilled to share with you the culmination of 5 years of research into quantum encryption algorithms that will revolutionize data security as we know it." Marcus clicked the first slide, and Emma felt physically ill. It was her diagram, her equations, her work, word for word, image for image, exactly as she created it. For the next 45 minutes, Emma sat in silent fury as Marcus presented her research as his own. He fielded questions with ease, demonstrating a deep understanding of the material. Because of course he understood it. She'd explained every detail to him, back when she trusted him, back when she thought they were partners. The audience was captivated. Several investors approached him afterward, eager to discuss funding opportunities. When the crowd finally thinned, Emma stood. Rashid touched her arm. "Are you ready?" "Yes. Let's do this." They approached Marcus, who was packing up his materials. When he looked up and saw Emma, his face went through a remarkable transformation: shock, fear, and then a carefully constructed mask of pleasant surprise. "Emma? Emma Carter? My God, I haven't seen you in years. How have you been?" Emma's voice was ice. "Cut the act, Marcus. We both know exactly how I've been. Homeless, jobless, and destroyed. Thanks to you." Marcus glanced around nervously, aware of the few remaining attendees watching with curiosity. "I don't know what you're talking about. Emma, if you're still upset about the misunderstanding with the research." "Misunderstanding?" Emma's voice rose. "You stole my work. You registered my algorithms under your name. You destroyed my career and my reputation. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft. That's a serious accusation." Marcus's expression hardened. "And one you couldn't prove 2 years ago. What makes you think anything has changed?" "Because I'm not alone anymore." Emma gestured to Rashid, who stepped forward. "Marcus Hale, meet Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour. He's been helping me investigate your pattern of theft, and we found some very interesting information." Marcus's eyes widened as he recognized Rashid. "Sheikh Al-Mansour, I didn't realize you were interested in this technology. If you're looking to invest—" "I'm not interested in stolen technology," Rashid said coldly. "And I'm certainly not interested in doing business with thieves. Dr. Chin sends her regards, by the way. She's very much looking forward to testifying about how you stole her machine learning algorithms 5 years ago." The color drained from Marcus's face. Sarah Chin? That was a completely different situation. She was confused about the scope of her contribution. She was robbed. Just like Emma. Just like how many others? Marcus? How many brilliant researchers have you exploited and discarded? Rashid's voice was hard as steel. "We have evidence. We have testimony. We have forensic analysis of the code proving Emma's authorship. And we have the resources to take you down. The only question is whether you want to do this publicly or privately." Marcus looked between them, his confident facade crumbling. "You can't prove anything. I have documentation, patents, everything." "Forged documentation," Emma interrupted. "I've analyzed every piece of evidence you submitted 2 years ago. The timestamps are manipulated. The email headers are spoofed. The code commits are backdated. You're good, Marcus, but you're not that good. Not good enough to fool someone who actually wrote the algorithms. This is insane. You're insane. No one will believe you over me. I have a reputation, connections, credibility. Had, Rashid corrected, past tense. Because by tomorrow morning, every major tech publication will have received a comprehensive dossier detailing your theft, complete with evidence, expert analysis, and testimony from multiple victims. Your reputation will be destroyed. Your patents will be challenged. Your career will be over. Unless... Marcus grabbed onto that word like a lifeline. Unless what? Unless you do the right thing, Emma said. You publicly admit that the quantum encryption algorithms are mine. You transfer the patents to my name. You issue a formal apology. And you agree to never work in research again. Do that, and we'll keep Sarah Chen's testimony private. We'll let you salvage some dignity. Refuse, and we'll bury you. Marcus stared at her, and Emma saw the moment he realized he'd lost. The arrogance, the confidence, the smug superiority, all of it evaporated, leaving behind a small, frightened man who'd finally been caught. You've changed, he said quietly. The Emma I knew would never have fought back like this. The Emma you knew was naive enough to trust you. She doesn't exist anymore. I'm stronger now, and I have people who actually care about me, who actually want to see me succeed. Something you never did. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Fine, I'll do it. I'll admit the truth. Just keep Sarah out of it. Please. You'll have the paperwork by tomorrow, Rashid said. Sign it, and this ends quietly. Refuse or try to run, and we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. They turned to leave, but Emma paused and looked back at Marcus one more time. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. All the power he'd held over her for 2 years had evaporated in a single conversation. You know what the saddest part is, Marcus? If you'd just been honest, if you'd just given me credit, we could have been partners. We could have changed the world together. But you were too insecure, too greedy, too afraid that my brilliance would overshadow yours. And now you have nothing. I hope it was worth it. She walked away without waiting for a response, Rashid beside her, and for the first time in 2 years, Emma felt free. The weight that had been crushing her chest, the constant fear and shame and anger, it was gone. She'd face her demon and won. She'd reclaimed her power. She reclaimed herself. Outside the convention center, Rashid pulled her into a quiet corner and wrapped his arms around her. Emma collapsed against his chest, shaking with relief and residual adrenaline. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. It's over, Rashid confirmed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You did it, Emma. You were magnificent. We did it. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Rashid pulled back slightly, looking down at her with an expression so tender it made Emma's heart ache. What happens now? What do you want to do with your life, Emma Carter, now that you have it back? Emma thought about it. A week ago, she would have said she just wanted to survive. But now she wanted so much more. I want to build something that matters. I want to use my skills to help people, to protect them, to make sure no one else gets exploited the way I was. And I want... She hesitated, then continued, I want to see where this goes. Us, if you still want that. I want that more than anything, Rashid said softly. But Emma, I need you to understand something. My world is complicated. There are dangers, pressures, expectations. Being with me won't be easy. Being without you would be harder, Emma replied. I've spent 2 years hiding from life, from connection, from everything that makes existence worthwhile. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to live with you. Rashid smiled, that genuine, warm smile that transformed his entire face, and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Emma felt like she was floating. So what's next? She asked. Next, We go back to my office and draft a press release announcing the formation of Carter Security Solutions, a new cybersecurity firm with you as CEO and Al-Mansour Energy Consortium as the primary investor and client. Then we have dinner. Then we start planning the rest of our lives. Sound good? Sounds perfect. As they walked toward Rashid's waiting car, hand in hand, Emma caught the reflection in a glass building. She barely recognized herself. Gone was the broken, defeated woman who'd served champagne with downcast eyes. In her place was someone strong, confident, and genuinely happy. Someone who'd survived betrayal and come out stronger. Someone who'd found not just justice, but love. Someone who'd reclaimed her life and her future. The shy waitress who'd begged for mercy was gone. In her place stood Emma Carter, tech genius, CEO, and partner to one of the world's most powerful men. And she was just getting started. 6 months later, Emma stood in the executive office of Carter Security Solutions, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The office occupied an entire floor of a building in Midtown with state-of-the-art equipment, a team of 20 brilliant cybersecurity experts, and clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to government agencies. The quantum encryption algorithms, now properly credited to her, had been licensed to major tech companies, generating millions in revenue. Emma Carter was no longer invisible. She was a force to be reckoned with, but the professional success, as satisfying as it was, paled in comparison to the personal transformation. Emma had reconnected with former colleagues from MIT, rebuilt her reputation, and even started mentoring young women in tech. Sarah Chun had joined her company as a senior researcher, finally able to return to the work she loved. And Marcus Hale, true to his word, had publicly admitted his theft and transferred the patents. He'd left the tech industry entirely, last Emma heard, working in some administrative position far from the spotlight. Justice, it turned out, was even sweeter than she'd imagined. The office door opened, and Rashid walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He'd been in meetings all morning, but had promised to stop by before his flight to Dubai. "How's my favorite CEO?" he asked, handing her a cup. "Busy. We just signed 3 new contracts this week. At this rate, we'll need to expand again. Good problems to have." Rashid set down his coffee and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm going to miss you this week. Dubai feels very far away when you're not there." Emma leaned back against him, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. "Then maybe I should come with you. I've been meaning to visit your headquarters anyway, see the operation firsthand." "I'd love that, but are you sure? I know how busy you are." "I'm sure. Besides, it's time I met the rest of your world. Your colleagues, your friends, your life outside of New York." Rashid turned her around to face him, his expression serious. "Emma, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. Something important." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Okay, what is it?" "These past 6 months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've changed me, made me better, made me want to be better. And I know we agreed to take things slow, to build trust, to make sure this was real. But I'm sure now. I'm completely, absolutely sure." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma Carter, will you marry me?" Emma stared at the box, her mind reeling. Marriage. She thought about it, of course, in abstract terms. But hearing him actually ask, seeing the hope and vulnerability in his eyes, made it real, and terrifying, and wonderful. "Rashid, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll build a life with me. Say you'll let me spend every day proving that I'm worthy of you. Say you'll take a chance on us." Emma thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, broken, defeated, alone. And she thought about the woman she was now, strong, successful, loved. Rashid had been part of that transformation, but more than that, he'd been her partner through all of it. He'd supported her, believed in her, fought for her. He'd shown her what real love looked like. And she wanted that. She wanted him. She wanted the future they could build together. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Rashid's face lit up with pure joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning diamond surrounded by sapphires, elegant and timeless. Then he kissed her, and Emma felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, in his arms. In this moment, in this life they were creating together. When they finally pulled apart, both of them laughing and crying, Rashid said, "I have one more surprise for you. Come with me." He led her to the elevator, and they rode down to the ground floor. Outside, a black SUV was waiting. They drove for 20 minutes, Emma asking questions the entire time, Rashid refusing to answer. Finally, they pulled up in front of the Azure Pearl. Emma's stomach clenched. "Why are we here?" "You'll see. Trust me." Inside, the restaurant looked exactly as Emma remembered. The crystal chandeliers, the white tablecloths, the elegant decor. But something was different. The staff was lined up near the entrance, and Mr. Peterson stood at the front, looking nervous. When he saw Emma, he stepped forward. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. I owe you an apology. A real one. What I did to you was unconscionable. I prioritized money over integrity, and I've regretted it every day since. I know words aren't enough, but I'm truly deeply sorry." Emma was stunned. "Mr. Peterson, thank you. I appreciate that. There's more." Peterson gestured to the staff. "Everyone here wanted to apologize as well. We all stood by and watched you be humiliated, and none of us spoke up. We were cowards, and we're sorry." One by one, the staff members approached Emma, offering their apologies and their congratulations on her success. Some of them she barely remembered, but their sincerity was evident. By the time the last person had spoken, Emma was crying again, not from pain this time, but from the overwhelming sense of closure. Rashid took her hand. "There's one more thing. Peterson, if you would." Peterson nodded and led them to the private dining section, the same area where Emma had been humiliated 6 months ago. But now it was transformed. The table was set for two, with candles and flowers and the finest china. Soft music played in the background. "I wanted to replace your worst memory of this place with your best," Rashid explained. "I wanted you to remember this room not as the place where you were broken, but as the place where everything changed, where you met me, where your new life began." Emma looked around the room, at the table where she'd begged for mercy, at the spot where she'd stood, while Rashid laughed at her pain. And she realized he was right. This was where everything had changed. This was where the old Emma had died, and the new Emma had been born. This was where she'd met the man she was going to marry. This was where her story had truly begun. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of it, for believing in me, for fighting for me, for loving me. Thank you for giving me my life back." "You gave yourself your life back," Rashid corrected gently. "I just had the privilege of watching you do it. And now I get the privilege of spending the rest of my life with you. I'm the lucky one, Emma." They sat down to dinner, and as they ate and talked and laughed, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. The journey from that terrible night to this perfect moment had been long and painful, but it had been worth it. Every struggle, every tear, every moment of despair had led her here, to this man, to this life, to this future full of infinite possibility. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony of Rashid's penthouse, looking out at the city lights, Emma thought about the CCTV footage that had started everything. The cameras had captured her humiliation, yes, but they'd also captured the truth. They'd revealed who she really was. Not a helpless victim, but a brilliant, resourceful woman who refused to stay down. They'd been the catalyst for justice, for redemption, for love. "What are you thinking about?" Rashid asked, pulling her closer. "About how strange life is. How one terrible moment can lead to something beautiful. How the worst night of my life led to the best thing that ever happened to me." "Us," Rashid said softly. "Us," Emma agreed, and as they stood there together, wrapped in each other's arms, Emma Carter knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The shy waitress who'd begged for mercy was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who'd fought for justice and won. A woman who'd reclaimed her power and her future. A woman who'd found love in the most unexpected place. A woman who was finally, truly, completely free. The CCTV footage had revealed who she really was. And who she really was turned out to be extraordinary.